Well, I do declare, you might just be the oddest man I've ever met.
You know, that's just what the Empress Alexandra said soon after. Now, there was a lady who liked to play games. Still, I'm the Doctor, by the way.
Oh, I'm Charlotte. Charlotte Pollard. Charlie to my friends.
It's Charlie, then. I tell you what, shall we explore? This way, do you think?
G'day audiophiles, you are listening to the Sirens of Audio, the podcast devoted to Doctor Who in the audio medium, not with a couple of mermaids, but with a couple of old guys. My name's Dwayne, and with me is the lovely Philip. G'day.
The not so old Philip, but thank you for that, Dwayne. Good to see you, mate, even with the insults.
We've got to be inclusive, Joining us for our first instalment of 2021 is all the way from Scotland, Kenny Smith. How are you, Kenny?
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm very well, thank you. And I don't think I'm that old. I like to regard myself as being 29 and 260 odd months. So I am 46 and a half, so excuse the maths.
So, Kenny, we know you from, mainly these days, we know you from a Vortex magazine as the editor. But I want to, usually at the start of our episodes, what I do is I take Philip down a little rabbit hole that he doesn't know what I'm going to talk about. And so you don't know what I'm going to talk about either. So let's just take a little trip down that rabbit hole. It's fun. Yeah. With a name like mine, I can take anyone down any rabbit hole I like. All right. So what I want to talk about was what you were doing, Philip, both of you, during the 90s, the wilderness years. What were you doing before this wonderful thing called Big Finish came along? Kenny, let's start with you.
Well, at the start of the 90s, I was still at school. In 1992, I went off to university to study journalism at Napier in Edinburgh, and then started work in the summer of 1994 in a place called Inverurie in Aberdeenshire. And in my very last week in that job, before I moved back down to central Scotland, there was an actor came to open a stone circle trail, an actor by the name of Peter Davison. So that was my leaving present. And then I was just working in local weekly newspapers throughout the 90s. But of course, still, as a Doctor Who fan, I was buying the new adventures in DWM.
Very good. Were you a bit of a fan of Bond as well? Were you doing Bond fanzines?
Yes, I was. I was doing a James Bond fanzine called Universal Exports, which ran for about 9 or 10 issues. And that was great fun as well. Got to meet Desmond Llewellyn when he came to Edinburgh, got a wee interview with him. So yes, I was doing that. I was keeping it Doctor Who, but okay, we're multimedia.
That's it. Philip, what about you? What was the 90s looking like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess for the early 90s, I started teaching. And so I think teaching was my all-consuming in some ways, and I guess a bit of movies and things. But I think for me, the big, it's about 1995. So I'd collected the Doctor Who magazine for years and years. And then kind of when Doctor Who stopped, I stopped collecting it for a couple of years. And in 1995, I moved to Newtown. I was doing some study there and just got married. And I was just going through a news agency, and there was a Doctor Who magazine on the stand. I thought, I haven't read one of these for a while. And I went in and bought it, and it refired up my Doctor Who passion. So I then went back and bought all the magazines I'd missed and started rereading them again. And that's when I kind of joined the Doctor Who Club of Australia and started getting involved in fandom out here. So yeah, that was about 95 onwards. I think I've been buying all those videos and things as they came out. But yeah, I guess 95 was when things started to fire up for me again.
I'd also been running the Glasgow Doctor Who group from 93 to 94, and I helped save the police boxes that we still have in Glasgow as well. doing a wee campaign when they were threatened with destruction. Nothing to do with Michael Grave, just Glasgow City Council. And helped save those. So that was a wee bit other sort of Doctor Who-y type stuff in the 90s.
Are they the blue police boxes like the Doctor has, or different sorts of police boxes?
Exactly the same as the Doctor has. The only difference is the front door has 3 panels on it rather than the 4. But the other side panels have all got the 4.
So legend has it when Legopolis was filmed that was the last police box in existence, but Glasgow is full of them.
In Glasgow, we once upon a time had 323 police boxes, but by 1992 we were down to the last 11. Then one was destroyed, so it just left 10 when we started our campaign to save them.
So what are they used for now?
They're used as coffee stands, selling medicinal cannabis type stuff, that sort of thing. So they actually do have a practical use.
Brilliant.
To wonder they haven't been painted green.
There was one that was painted bright green. There's one that's red because the Glasgow boxes were originally red. They were run by the Royal Mail, who over here were doing the post boxes as well. So they were bright red, they were post box red, but became blue in 1974 when Strathclyde Regional Council took over responsibility for them. A little bit of boring local history there, but there we go.
There's a lot of history there. So, Dwayne, what were you doing in the 90s? How did you survive the wilderness years?
The wilderness years for me, they weren't overly exciting. I kind of... You remember when the ABC was showing Doctor Who at 4 a.m. in the morning?
I do. I've videoed them all.
That was around 1990, early 90s. That kind of finished. That's when I finished my off-air video collection. So I had everything then. The book started coming out, and I got Time Worm Genesis. I wasn't a huge fan of that. I didn't get any other books, and I think the only other couple of new adventures that I got were, that I can think of off the top of my head, Nightshade was one. I really enjoyed Nightshade, and Blood Harvest, because the Silurians was always a favourite episode of mine. So when I saw Blood Harvest with the Silurian... No, not Blood Harvest, Blood Heat, I think it's called. Is it Jim Mortimer's Blood Heat? Yes. So, yeah, I got that. And then the most exciting event of the 90s for me was watching the TV movie in 96 when it was broadcast. So I was extremely excited about that. I was watching Sliders at the time, and I knew that there was a toss-up between Sliders and Doctor Who, and they went with Sliders in the end. So I stopped watching Sliders in protest after that. So I was not impressed at all. And then it wasn't until the late 90s, around 2000, that I got back. I was always in the club, the Doctor Who Club of Australia, but I became more involved with the club and went to more meetings and things like that and started hanging around with the fans again around 2000. Yeah.
Also, just when you mentioned the TV movie, over here there were midnight openings for the music store HMV, and myself and quite a few people from the Glasgow and Edinburgh Doctor Who groups queued outside the one in Edinburgh at midnight so we could get our hands on the TV movie. And we all queued up, and there was a good few of us. In fact, one of the people who queued was Paul Mars, later to write for Paul McGann in Big Finish and in the novels, which is always quite fun. So that was a happy memory from the 90s as well. Being blooming cold as well.
Nice one. Paul, what did he write? Was it Core of Glam Rock? Was that...
He did. He also did Stones of Venice as well, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
and
of course.
Quite a few others for other Doctors.
All right, so that gives us a bit of a rundown of the 90s and where we're at. Let's get back up out of that rabbit hole and get into the meat of this episode. So, Kenny, first of all, I want to ask you, what's your... We usually do this with all our guests because we're interested. We like to hear the background of our guests. How did you become a fan of Doctor Who?
Back in the 1970s, my mum was a fan of Tom Baker. I never quite got what she got from watching him, whether it was the enjoyment of just the bizarre alien character, because Doctor Who was not my mum's kind of viewing. And I would watch it with her. And at that point, it was always called Mum's Programme in our house. It was like, go and watch, it was time for Mum's going to go and watch her programme. And I watched it with her. And then as time moved on, Mum moved away from it, but I stuck with it through thick and thin, and that's my waistline I'm talking about. And it became my show. It's one that I've stuck with. Started getting the Target novelizations, getting the videotapes, and obviously as things developed, the original novels and the audios.
What is it that you liked about Doctor Who as opposed to something like, say, Star Trek Next Gen? Because that was coming out around the time I was a teenager. So
I found Next Gen to be just so bland and straight, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. And to be honest, I didn't really enjoy it until Best of Both Worlds, as I found it. I just could not get into it. I just found it too moral, too dull. It just wasn't my cup of tea. Whereas with a character like the Doctor, you've got somebody who's slightly anarchic, disrespectful of authority, good sense of humour, quirky, different. He walks into a room and everybody notices him. And that absolutely worked for me and completely got my attention and became my first ever hero, quickly followed by Roger Moore's James Bond.
So with regards to the audios, were you following Big Finish right from the very beginning, right from the Benny series?
I mean, I'd been buying the New Adventures novels, and then the BBC books started, but I carried on buying the Benny books as I loved the characters so much. So then when it was announced that Big Finish had got the license to do the Benny audios, well, here's my money, Mr. Hay Gallery and Mr. Russell, and was getting my stuff ordered, got them sent out. So yes, I was a subscriber from the very, very beginning.
Tape or CD?
Yeah, I was going to ask exactly the same question.
Got to be CDs. I've always been a digital media kind of guy.
So how did your relationship with Big Finish develop from there? You seem to be a man who throws himself into whatever you really like. So how did it sort of get deeper, and how did you get deeper and deeper into the worlds of Big Finish?
Well, I started off listening, and I was a Doctor Who fan who listened to the audios. Absolutely loved them, enjoyed the drama, enjoyed having new stories. I mean, there's some of the early stuff is just fantastic. You know, Whispers of Terror could never be done on TV. Justin Richards, genius. And really, really enjoyed them. And then when it was announced that Big Finish had got Paul McGann, I mean, I don't think it can be overstated. This was new Doctor Who with the current Doctor, with a completely clean slate. There was no start. We had the starting point of the TV movie, but there was no end point. And that really, really excited me. The fact we had ongoing new series. And of course, at that point, the show had been off air for a long time. And then we get these audios coming out. So then Storm Warning was released, and I was completely blown away. That's when I stopped being just a Doctor Who fan who would buy the audios, and I became a Big Finish fan. And I so enjoyed those first 4 McGanns. I was so enthused by them, really excited by them. And I thought, I want to know more. I want to know how these were made. So because I'm a journalist in my day job, and quite a few of my friends, I knew people at Big Finish, so dropped the likes of Gary Russell, Nick Briggs a line, Jason Hay Gallery, and got in touch with them and started doing this fanzine, as it was called, the McGannzine. And it was just intended as a one-off because I just loved these audios and wanted to celebrate them, how exciting they were. And it really began from there. Even things like getting hold of India Fisher. I went through her agent, got hold of her contact details, and got an interview with her and got very friendly. Turns out she's just a few months older than me. So, of course, I am only 29, just the same as India. I'd never give a lady's age away. And generally just loved it. I got one of my favourite things for that issue was I got my friend Sally to listen to Storm Warning. She hadn't really seen Doctor Who. And she listened to it and she loved it. She thought it was great. And she was disappointed that she couldn't see it rather than carry on. She's not a big radio person. I'd always enjoyed radio drama growing up and just radio in general. And that was me, off and running.
So, Philip, you've got some more of Kenny's earlier productions. Was there anything you wanted to put to Kenny about those?
So the finished product and the McGann ones, I trying to remember how I heard about them, but I heard they existed. So, and there's this guy in Scotland who had some stuff, and I remember sending you a letter, but using real post back in those days, and I'm trying to work out how I paid for them. I sent you a check or something. It was weird. I don't know quite how it worked. And then got all of his fanzine magazines. So by that stage, I was getting pretty hooked into the Big Finish because I just thought the quality of them was just astounding. And I heard there was this guy producing this stuff. And if you actually read his fanzines, the quality and of the writing and the depth is just amazing. Because I like him, wanted to know how were they doing this? How were they making this program? And so he just goes into this level of depth and detail and interviews. And yeah, it starts off with obviously McGann is his first thing, but then I'm a big fan of the Companion Chronicles. There's all this detail about that as well. And yeah, they're just brilliant. So yeah, when I heard it was going over to Vortex, I was a bit amused. So how did Vortex happen?
Oh, before you get to Vortex, I just want to hold up this little thing. Because before Vortex, Big Finish, can you see that? You can sort of vaguely see what I'm holding up there. Big Finish used to put out what they called a magazine. And I thought it was very funny that they put out a magazine, but it was actually a CD. And in a way, I really liked that format, and I liked hearing that. It was there you go, holding them all up for us, Kenny. It was the only way you could get extras in those days, because they didn't put extras on the CDs back in those days. So I can't remember the exact timeline, but I remember feeling a twinge of disappointment when it switched over to Vortex, because I thought, we're not going to get those CDs anymore. Fortunately, they just put the extras on every CD afterwards, so that was good. But yes, tell us more about Vortex.
Yeah, of course, Vortex was originally being produced by David Richardson, Nicholas Briggs, and the wonderful late Paul Sprague. And latterly, it was Paul who was writing and editing Vortex. And after Paul's passing back in 2014, very suddenly, I dropped Nick a line because I was doing the Big Finish companion books to say, look, if I can help you out in the short term to keep Vortex going, then I'll be more than happy to do so. And they offered it to me just to keep it going on a monthly basis. And it's been an absolute honour to do so. I mean, genuinely, before I start every single issue, I create the folder for the files, for everything to go in. And I think of Paul every single time, because it genuinely, Paul was Vortex. He always will be, very much at the heart of it. He set the format and brought the fun to it, and the most wonderfully pun-tastic headlines. And I do try to keep those going in his memory, as we used to enjoy sharing very bad puns by email. I emailed Paul virtually every single day. We're just chatting about life, the universe, and everything. I got to meet him once at the second Big Finish day when I did a signing for Volume 2 of the Big Finish Companion, and so it came about from there. So and just carry on every month, and because contemporaneously we were doing the releases, but then that changed about 18 months ago. So we preview what's coming up the following month, rather than you'd have for example, the January this year issue with the January releases. So now the January issue, as you'll all have seen, has got the February release has been previewed. So it's sort of evolving the format, but it's very much exactly as Paul laid it down to be.
I travelled over to the UK in 2011, and I contacted Paul and said I was writing an article for the club magazine back home, and could I come and have a chat? And what I was secretly hoping was I might get into a studio and see a recording session or something like that. But I went to the Big Finish offices. He was such a lovely fella. He was a bit confused as to why I might want to interview him. And I said to him, look, you're here. You're here at the hub of everything that goes on in this magical place that I envisage from over here in Australia. And he's got his finger on the pulse of everything that's going on, as far as I'm concerned, sitting in that office. And we crossed the road. He took me over the road to a little pub that was over the road, and we had lunch there and had a chat for a couple of hours. It was really nice. And as we were walking past a post box, he had a big manila folder, and he popped it in the post box, and he dropped it in. And he said, "You know what that was?" I said, "I haven't got a clue." He says, "That was Tom Baker's first script. It's going off to Tom." I said, "You are lucky, Paul. You didn't tell me that before you put it in the box. I would have mugged you." But yeah, that was cool. So yeah, it was really nice to have actually met the man. He was a great guy.
Definitely, it was. I mean, hugely missed. I mean, everybody, Big Finish, whoever met him will always remembers him fondly. I mean, he did a bit of uncredited directing on one of the Dark Eyes releases as well, which it just. Paul, everybody loved Paul, and a huge loss. And sadly we lost him before all the new series stuff came to Big Finish, because you can just imagine how excited he would have been to have all of this and to be involved in that. So yeah, he was gone far too soon.
People say you should never meet your heroes. Have you found any truth in that?
Well,
because I've been in a position where I've met lots of my musical heroes because I've done radio and I've met a lot of Doctor Who people as well. I've never truly been disappointed. People say you shouldn't meet your heroes, but I don't necessarily agree with that. What about you? I
wouldn't agree with that because one of my favourite interviews I did for Vortex, I think it was January 2015. I got an interview. I was given an interview with Tom Baker, which David Richardson fixed up, and I had to phone Tom at a certain time, which I did. And I've interviewed well-known celebrities. I've interviewed leading politicians, met Prime Minister, the First Minister of Scotland, and just like nothing phases me with that sort of thing. But then, given Tom Baker, my childhood hero, and of course we've all heard stories about Tom being awkward in interviews and the like with national media and being on TV, but he was brilliant. I absolutely, because I was so nervous when I phoned him and pick him up, and then just get a voice going, hello. And it was just wonderful. He did not disappoint. I think he knew quite quickly is that I was a big fan particularly of his era, because that was when I started watching. I was born 11 days after Tom became the Doctor. After episode 6 of Planet of the Spiders. And he was wonderful. I just could not have been happier by the end of it, because he kept saying things like, that was a good question, Kenny, give us another one. And it was, particularly when he called me by my name, it was just like, oh, Doctor Who, just talk to me. And, I've been so lucky. I've got to interview quite a few of the Doctors over the years. Colin Baker, wonderful. Peter Davison, great company. Sylvester's good. And I've got quite friendly with quite a few of the people who've been in the show. Katie Manning I'm very friendly with Katie. I actually named my daughter after her, complete with the spelling. And just up to my right, you won't be able to see it, obviously being an audio, but there's up here on my wall, there is a signed picture that says up there, it's to Katie from Katie, as I managed to introduce the two Katies last year, which was very, very nice. It was a nice wee thing to have. But no, genuinely, everybody's been fantastic. Particularly somebody like Mark Bonner, who plays the 11 in the Big Finish audios, we've become very, very friendly, and I love Mark to bits. He's not at all as terrifying as you might think, even when the 6 does pop out in conversation.
Oh, we don't want that.
Doctor Who, Storm Warning.
Memoirs of an Edwardian Adventuress by Charlotte E. Pollard. Chapter 1. Candy floss clouds scattered as the mighty dirigible soared into the black night sky.
Raise your glasses, gentlemen. I give you the R101.
The R101.
Frailing. Over here, man, over here.
Maybe they wouldn't be singing our praises, Lord Tamworth, if they knew that this ship hadn't completed its trial.
Shh. Not having this, not again. Safe as houses.
On paper, sir, on paper.
Incredible. The time ship crashing. And again. And again.
I watched as the full moon shimmered into view, casting silver rays about the cabin when...
Oh no, Vortisaurs swarming to pick over the debris. Get away from there, you vultures! Leave that wreck in peace!
I need you, Frailing. The Prime Minister needs you. Your king and your country need you to be stout, dependable, and strong.
It's just like I say, if I remember my Earth history correctly, the R101 airship took to the skies for her maiden voyage to India early in October 1930.
Yes, and?
And crashed in flames in France during a storm in the early hours of the next morning, killing everyone aboard.
What the devil?
Rocked by something.
Never mind that now, Frailing. Look what that silly ass has done to me best mess trousers.
Oh, look, I'm really very sorry. I've... Whoops.
Now, who exactly are you, and just how do you come to be aboard my airship?
Is that the greetings over with?
What?
I'm the Doctor, by the way.
Oh, I'm Charlotte Pollard. Charlie to my friends.
But it might be worth keeping an eye on that one as our little adventure progresses.
They're breaking through. They're...
Godspeed you on your way, airship R101, and God bless your passengers, the true masters of the air.
Okay, so let's jump into the story that you've selected to have a chat with us about today. And it just so happens that this month is the 20th anniversary of the release of Storm Warning. So I don't know whether that was part of your consideration for choosing that story, but it just coincidentally happens that it is the 20th anniversary. So this is a celebration. First Sirens of Audio of the year. It's the 20th anniversary of Storm Warning. So take it away, Kenny. Why did you choose this one?
Well, this one is hugely important to me, as I mentioned earlier. This is a story that made me from being a Doctor Who fan into a Big Finish fan. I remember reading the Doctor Who magazine announcement when we were told Paul McGann's coming back, and here's the stories. I'm so excited, going on the Big Finish website, copying and pasting all the info from the website, effectively taking these details, putting them into a Word document, and basically making my own version of the Doctor Who programme guide just from the Big Finish website, and using the synopses and things like that, and just so enthused by it. In fact, my sad admission is that the night that I read that this happened, I couldn't sleep because I was so excited, even though this was 7 months away from actually being released. And it just had everything for me, this story. I mean, I remember getting up every morning, because I still lived at my mum and dad's house at this point, and getting down, looking for the post every day, waiting for that white envelope with the CD in it. Nothing there. And just kept waiting until finally the CD came through, because I could see the postie when I was leaving for work at the end of my streets. There was only 16 houses in our street, but even so, I ended up being late for work because I waited for the postie to come down so I could get my mail, and got this CD. And I was so excited, put it on my Discman, which I then connected via tape into my car stereo, and just couldn't believe how great it was. The theme from David Arnold, wonderful, exactly what I'd been hoping for, because obviously we'd heard a bit of a preview in Doctor Who magazine, and it didn't have the David Arnold theme. And then here we were, new adventures, the Doctor, new companion, historical setting, something that I'd never heard of, which to my shame I was quite embarrassed about, considering all these people who died on board the R101. So I'd done some research beforehand using encyclopedias in the library. Remember them, people? Encyclopedias and the libraries, not Wikipedia. And looking up what the R101 was. It's just so epic. We've got wonderful score from Alistair Locke. It's swooping. It doesn't feel like any of the Big Finish scores up until that point had been. It felt filmic. It felt like something, almost at times you can hear echoes of Titanic in it, Titanic of the Air. And it's such good drama. We meet Charley Pollard, and within, I think, the first 20 seconds of India Fisher performing as her, you're in love with her. She's brilliant. She's just such an adorable character, beautiful voice. And it's just so wonderfully set up as we get to meet the likes of Lord Tamworth, with the wonderful Gareth Thomas bringing him to life, and his fantastic relationship with Lieutenant Colonel Frayling, played by Nicholas Pegg. And you've got the friction, we've got a bit of class there, class warfare from the leftovers from the Victorian age going into the 1930s. And it's just such a fantastic story. It makes you think, why had this never been done before? Why has the R101 story never been in a movie? It's just, after Titanic, it's the perfect thing that could have been picked up as the Titanic of the skies.
It still hasn't.
It's a brilliant story. Alan Barnes just absolutely nails it from the word go. We've got a nice gentle start with the Doctor in the TARDIS, looking for the TARDIS manual and working his way through things. And then once the Vortisaurs attack the TARDIS, that's us. We're off and we're running and we're flying. And the story is relentless for those first 2 episodes, building up and building up. We've got the passenger in the room. We don't know who they are. What are they? We can tell they're alien. And then, of course, we just got that brilliant cliffhanger to episode 2 when they find there's the spaceship outside, and it's like, it's epic. Epic is the word for it. Am I the only one in sharing the love for it or feeling the love for it? How do you guys feel about it?
Yeah.
We can't get a breath in, for goodness sake. That's amazing.
Philip, you're next. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, can I say, listening to it again this week, it was once again just amazing. And I mean, the early runs of Big Finish are still, I guess maybe it's partly nostalgia. It's partly just the fact that they were just so exciting and original to start off with. And I think because there were so few Big Finish around, I know I listened to them over and over. So stuff comes out now, and I listen to it once, and I try and get another listen, but it's maybe 2 or 3 years between listening. And I mean, I'm just going through Doom Coalition again at the moment. And, so this is my second listen of Doom Coalition, and I am loving it even more than I did the first time. But with these early ones, I was listening to them 2 or 3 times a month and then going back after 2 or 3 months. So Storm Warning, I must have listened to 15, 20 times. So when I put it on again this week, it was just like an old friend coming back again. And of course, I was listening with slightly different ears because I knew we were going to talk about it. I do think Alan Barnes was just such a good choice to write it. I think Gary and him were connected with the Doctor Who magazine, and Alan had done lots of strips earlier on. And a lot of Storm Warning feels like a cartoon strip. It's these big images. You can imagine these big pictures of the R101 meeting the spaceship, the Vortex crashing its head through the window. So the pictures that are set up are like cartoon strips, images, bright, vibrant. And so the story carries that. And so I think, Alan was just a great writer for the choice, and then bringing him back later on was great. I remember being very excited when Paul McGann was announced because I didn't think they'd ever get him. And and Gary Russell had been out to Australia. I talked to Gary over coffee, and he'd said, "No, we'll never get Paul." He was just blatant about the fact that Paul will never do this. He was just so sure about it. And then within a few months' time, it was being announced they had him. So I know that originally when Big Finish writers had met, I know when Gary and Jason Haig-Ellery, Jason's told me that when all the writers got round in the room originally, one of the writers who was there was Stephen Moffat. And once Stephen Moffat found out they didn't have Paul McGann, he left because he only wanted to write for Stephen Moffat, for new Doctors, and didn't want to do old Doctor Who stuff. So interesting that had they got Paul at the start, we'd probably have stories by Stephen Moffat in Big Finish. And so that's one of those interesting quirks of fate that just didn't happen because he decided that wasn't for him at the time. But within 18 months, suddenly we have these amazing adventures with Paul. And I think, just like he said, we had 4 in a row. So up until that point, the Doctors were jumping backwards and forwards. And it wasn't seasons. It was great stories and wonderful stories. I loved everything in the first 15. But now we actually had seasons. So 4 episodes in a row. And it felt like a season. So that to me was just super exciting. In terms of Storm Warning, I love the movie tone beginning. The way Alan gets all this information across really quickly and sets the 1920s, 1930s feel with the movie tone film. You hear the film clicking away in the background. It feels black and white at that point. And India Fisher, Charley, I've met India a couple of times. And, I was in love with her on Storm Warning. I meet her in person. I'm still in love with her. India's just the most amazing person. And Charlie's a character, just exudes warmth and character and love. And, I mean, I guess they filmed this third. This was the third one they filmed in the season. So, but this Paul and India had worked together for a couple of days by this stage. And they just click. So every scene they do together just is brilliantly scripted, witty lines, Geronimo's, and all those backgrounds. But the two of them just feel on fire from the start, and it's such a brilliant show.
Kenny, you wanted to say something about when Philip was talking about Stephen Moffat.
Yes, I don't know if you saw that in a recent issue of Vortex, I did an interview with Stephen Moffat, and I mentioned this original Big Finish meeting to him. And he said that, yes, he left and he should have stayed. With hindsight, he should have stayed. So when he mentioned the Eighth Doctor's companions from Big Finish and Night of the Doctor, that's his means of an apology to Big Finish for leaving and being so rude.
Right.
Very good.
And it makes Big Finish all canon as well, which, let's face it, we all know it is anyhow. I mean, I've no doubt that Big Finish is canon. The book's here, but the Big Finish, no doubt.
100% agree.
I like that. I like that when all three of us are in agreement. If anyone, there's plenty who don't, but we agree. So there you go. For me, I came into Big Finish a little later. My first Big Finishes were not purchased by me. I borrowed a few off a friend. I think the first 5 I got were Spare Parts, Chimes of Midnight, Storm Warning, Lugaroo, and the Sirens of Time. So I had that selection. And I started with Chimes of Midnight. So that still remains probably my biggest impact because, the Eighth Doctor and Charley, it was like you guys have said, it was huge. So I went back to Storm Warning from that, got the introduction story there, and I was certainly in love with that run of Eighth Doctor and Charley stories, particularly that first 2 seasons. Mind you, I'm one of the ones that really does love the Divergent arc as well. So yeah, there are a few of us around, Kenny. There are a few of us that really, really enjoy it. It's a shame in a way it was cut short, but yeah. So I like that one, and over the years, because back then I wasn't looking at cast lists or who was in it so much, but when I go back to re-listen now, I really appreciate who was in it, because this was Alan Barnes' first story, right? So yep. He's done so many great things over the years. He hasn't got a massive catalogue of stories with Big Finish, but the ones that he has done are absolutely fantastic. You've got Nick and Barnaby in there who are sensational. I think Barnaby does... I think the Afrikaans accent's got to be one of the hardest accents to master, and I think he does a really good job. Not that I'm an Afrikaan person, so if you're from South Africa, you probably pick it up for sure. But to me, it sounds fantastic, because there's no way in the world I could do it. I can do a little bit of Scottish, for instance, Kenny, but I can't do. But don't ask me to, please don't. Otherwise, I'll ask you to do some Aussie. Helen Goldwyn came on and was talking about Storm Warning when she was on, and she talked about how nervous they all were at that particular time, because, you know, it was Paul McGann's first run of stories, and all of the production team were really nervous about, you know, impressing Paul. They wanted him to keep coming back. It was all those early stages. So,
well, they wanted to come back because they actually travelled to him rather than him come down to London, which everyone else had done. They actually went out. They all went up to where he was to make sure they got extra days out of him.
Yeah, do anything for him. But Helen's another one who has just gone from strength to strength over the years. Acting in Big Finish, that wasn't her first, was it? She was in the really early ones, wasn't she? But she's gone on and she's writing, she's directing, and I'd recently listened to, I think there's a Missy story with Ogrons in it that Helen Goldwyn does recently, and I actually heard the Ogron voice in Storm Warning, so I could tell it was Helen. Her monster voices are great. I think she's hilarious. She's fantastic.
She is. She's also very good Silurian.
Oh, was she in the? Ah, she's in there too. Very good. It's been so long since I've revisited those early ones. I need to do it again.
In terms of guest stars, I mean, Gareth Thomas was a major
huge
catch to get in terms of, you know, it gets all the Blake 7 fans aboard, and he is extraordinarily good. I mean, he's nothing like Blake. The character he plays is, he's heartwarming, and in terms of, you actually do like him. And I guess for me, and I'd forgotten what happened to him until fairly late on, because you know that everyone dies on this airship, and I was getting fonder and fonder of him, his character, and I was sort of thinking, I don't want this guy to die. He's actually too good. And obviously, you know, Alan Barnes obviously thought the same way, because, you know, they left him up in space. Yep. So he and Charley were the only two survivors.
Blake was always a forlorn, sort of melancholy character in Blake 7, but here he reminded me of like almost like Nigel Bruce, like a jolly type of Nigel Bruce, who was Watson in the old Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movies, and always chuckling and giggling, and he reminded me of that. And I never picked up before I was looking at cast lists that it was Gareth Thomas. So I think he was sensational in that. Absolutely sensational.
Absolutely. Full of bluster and just typical old school British politician, really, with all the noises. And he's a funny kind of socialist, which is a line that still gets me laughing every time. But yeah, he was superb. I think he's such a good guest star to launch the series with as well. When you've got a name like that and you think, oh, Gareth Thomas. Big Finish are taking it seriously, and not that they ever weren't, but I think Gary did a great job directing this one. It's got so much pace in it, because you can feel there's that energy throughout it, and then just when we reach episode 3, when we got onto the Triskelion ship, it slows down a bit where everybody catches their breath, and then by episode 4 we're all running again when the Uncreators are set loose. Love it, absolutely love it.
Have you had much to do with Alistair Locke over the years? Like he was doing I can't remember, was he doing a computer voice or some kind of voice in that? I picked up that's Alistair Locke's voice throughout that, but he would go on to do many, many things over the years. And I think that was He was also involved in Caldor City as well.
That's right. Yes, Alistair's prolific. He's does obviously the voice of Zen and Dorak in the Blake 7 audios from Big Finish. He's still busy working away, and he's been back doing some Tom Baker audios recently for Big Finish as well. And I think he did one of the novel adaptations. But yes, he's still working away. Lovely fellow. And the sound design in this is so good. I mean, simple things like the hatch opening at the start, which was produced by his creaky old chair, as I recall from the McGann zine when I asked him about it. And yes, it's such. I mean, you can feel your way around the ship. You know exactly where you are. You know when you're up inside the airship from the wind sounds and all the rustles and things. You know when you're in the cabins. Yeah, it's beautifully sound designed and beautifully scored as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm from memory, I can't remember if Storm Warning actually had a cold open, but the other stories in this season had cold opens before the theme music kicked in, whereas future seasons didn't. Do you remember anything about that, Kenny?
Yes, they were. I think they're very much in the vein of the new series. We've got, before Sword of Orion, we've got Charlie and the Doctor with Ramsay. Then for Stones of Venice, we've got the Doctor and Charlie on the run with that wonderful bit of music from Russell Stone. And then for Minuet in Hell, we've got the Doctor saying, I dream of a place and this place is hell, something like that.
That's right, yeah.
And there's a good... Yes, I don't know why they dropped them, but I think they're... Obviously, we're used to them with the TV series now, but I do like those when you've got that wee pre-credits sequence just to set the tone and set the pace. And yeah, I love those.
Now, guys, was there anything else you wanted to say about Storm Warning before we finish up?
What a glorious cover. Isn't it gorgeous?
Oh,
got that lovely picture. Gold. Yeah, it's particularly, obviously, I take it you know the story that was a mistake that the BBC approved when they shouldn't have. And I think it's officially bronze. But I think it's a beautiful logo in bronze. And I just love it. I think it's a fantastic design, and it really catches the eye. Again, it's got that filmic look, and we get to see the R101 on there, so you very much get the feel for what it's all about.
Philip?
I think we talked a lot of stuff. I mean, it's an amazing cast. I think the way it plots really well. Some of the further Paul McGann ones, probably the episodes are a bit long and could have done with a bit more cutting down. But these fit the 25-minute format pretty well, except I think for the third episode, pretty tightly. And I think it keeps that pace because of that. So it's interesting where often less is more. And I think Storm Warning actually manages to do that. So even though which one's the one that the Brigadier one, which just those episodes go on and on forever. And even though you feel like you're getting value for money, I think actually when you cut it down tight, it actually makes it better. I guess I just want to keep seeing Charlie's praise in terms of just as a character. One of the things Big Finish did so well early on was create new characters. So even Smythe and Charlie were the two sort of first ones. And then I think by the end of this year, we had Erman join. I think that's this year as well. Erman starts as well. And so they were really setting out to carefully think about their companions. And you can see that they did a far better job than often the TV show did earlier on. They just sort of throw people in. Whereas these characters were really well thought out. And just the way India worked, I mean, she's marvelous. So we first see her in Winter for the Adept a couple of episodes earlier as the actress. So India Fisher's in that, playing Friends of Nissa. And a different character, but same voice. But obviously, she was just so good to work with. And I think what's gone on with India and Charlie, even with her, all they did with her with Paul McGann, then introducing her into the Divergent Universe, then with she works brilliantly with Colin Baker, and I'm hoping we get some more stories with Colin Baker because they work so well together. And then into her own TV series, which her own TV series. It's like a series. Her own series. They're brilliant, and just India Fisher can just carry. Yeah, I'm amazed. It's great. She's got a huge career in MasterChef in England, and she's the voice of MasterChef, and that's great.
I'm sorry, I need to jump in here. You said England. It's not just England. It's the UK.
Sorry.
I'm so offended by that comment. I cannot believe you said that. Oh.
You'll be separate soon.
Don't go into that, please.
Okay, so fantastic. Happy anniversary, Storm Warning, 20 years. Thank you so much, Kenny, for picking that one.
Come on then, what are you waiting for?
It's just... Charlie, I don't know how to say this.
It's all right, Doctor. I know.
You do?
And I'd love to come with you. See the galaxies, mix with the Martians and visit the Venusians. Oh, please.
Well, you'd better help me up then, hadn't you? Up.
There's just one thing, Doctor. We can't keep on calling this monster, can we?
We can't?
We can't. And I was just looking at his little face just now, and do you know, he's the spitting image of Mr. MacDonald.
Who?
Oh, you know, the Prime Minister, Ramsay MacDonald. Well, what do you say to that then, Ramsay? There, Ramsay it is.
I'm so glad that's settled. Ready, Charlie? To the TARDIS then, Ramsay. Hi-ho and away!
Now, I want to ask you, Kenny, you mentioned also, one of us mentioned, it might have been Philip, I hope we have more stories with the Sixth Doctor. Well, now with the monthly range finishing up, there are opportunities for box sets and things like this to happen. There's no reason we can't have more Charlie and Eighth Doctor box sets, surely. And, of course, Charlie and Sixth Doctor box sets. So tell us some of your thoughts about what the monthly range has meant to you, what it means to you to be finishing, and how you feel about the future of Big Finish.
The monthly range, big thing for me, I suppose, obviously as a subscriber from the very early days, getting those CDs through, as I mentioned, I've been a big fan. It's been something that it was the foundation on which Big Finish was built, was that monthly range. And then, of course, we've had things come along. We've had Dalek Empire, Cyberman, Sarah Jane Smith, I, Davros, all these various spin-off series. And then, of course, the audios with Lucy began, and anyone who follows me on Twitter at FinishedZine will know how much I love Sheridan Smith, my future second wife. My first wife knows this. She's downstairs. She's just literally come in from work, so she may have heard that. It means it's hugely important. It's been just such a big range. It's given us some of the all-time greatest Doctor Who stories in any media ever, as Russell T Davies once said about spare parts. And it's given us stories like Jubilee, which have gone on to become a big part of Doctor Who with Dalek. And there's just so many brilliant stories in there. It doesn't matter whatever mood you're in, you'll find something that'll make you, if you're in the mood you want to laugh, you just need to find something like The One Doctor straight away. That'll give you a giggle. Or if you're feeling festive, there's one we had last Christmas from Ned Fountain. There's something for your mood no matter what you're in. And if you fancy, even just with the one-part episodes, if you fancy a quick bite, there's the 4x25-minute format to get into those. So yeah, it's a huge thing. And of course, I'm sad it's coming to an end, but everything has its time, and there's no way that it will be left unreplaced. There will be plenty more stories with the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Doctors to come. And you mentioned box sets there with potentially with Charlie. That's a fantastic idea. Of course, we've seen last year the Further Adventures of Lucy Miller came out, which slot in neatly between the first and second series of the Lucy audios. So yes, there's every possibility that could well happen. I would love that to be the case. So no spoilers from me here, guys. I'm not giving away any info, basically because I don't know. Or do I? Who knows? That's the way to go.
Don't say anything. Philip will try and get you to break your non-disclosure agreement like a shot. He tries with every single person.
I'm afraid it's not going to happen.
Just out of curiosity, how much do you know? I mean, you have to be a bit ahead with Vortex, but I'm sure they don't tell you much ahead of that, do you? Do they?
I mean, Nick Briggs pretty much keeps me in the loop. He'll let me know what's coming up, and if I don't know, I just need to ask. But the Eccleston news was a bigger surprise to me as anyone, because that was such a closely guarded secret. So I cannot wait to start the previews for those. It's some great writers in there, and it's really, really going to be exciting. But yes, there are surprises that I don't know about, stuff that's so top secret, which is great, because at the end of the day, I'm a fan, and I like surprises. I like getting these wee treats when they come through. So yeah, so to find out Christopher Eccleston's name, I was like, yes, get in.
It's others with first Paul McGann, then Tom Baker, now Chris Eccleston. David Tennant, I always expected. So, I mean, I love the David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, but I always knew he'd be there. But, yeah, Eccleston, I thought, never. Paul McGann, I thought never. Tom Baker, I thought never. So those are the ones that when they come on...
John Hurt, I never thought would get either.
Didn't even occur to me. I mean, John Hurt didn't even occur to me to get. So when I heard that, and then, the John Hurt stories are brilliant.
And then you've got the recastings as well, which are absolutely fabulous. They just seem to be getting better and better. Jacob Dudman's wonderful. John Coleshaw, superb. And I heard rumours that the things are going to be happening with first and second Doctor stories. Something's going to be happening with them. I don't know what, but it's exciting to find out because I love that era of the show. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, let's go on to our recommendations. Now, Kenny, we like to recommend our listeners something that we've been listening to, which it doesn't have to be Doctor Who related, Big Finish related, anything like that. It could be music, could be anything at all. Is there anything that, and it could be your podcast too, Kenny, is there anything that you've been listening to that you'd like to recommend our listeners?
Well, I'll go, if I can cheat slightly, I'll go for two. I'll give my podcast a quick plug that I do.
Absolutely.
With months, David Steele and Tom Harris. We do our podcast, which is The Power of Three, which you can find on Twitter at Power of Three Pod, which is very much Doctor Who centric. And there's the three of us, and we tend to discuss three different things, whether it's with a linked theme, whether it's three stories set in Scotland, three Christmas episodes, that kind of thing. And it's all pulled together. So, and we're doing recently we've struggled to get episodes done because Tom's been super busy with his new job. So Dave and I have carried on when we can. In fact, we recorded an episode when we went for a walk in a park, and we decided, oh, what the heck, let's just chat about the new adventures. So we did that, which that dropped in the middle of last month. But the other thing I will talk about that I love to listen to is a musician who's quite, I suppose you could say almost obscure. Her name's Tuve Lu. She's from Sweden, but it's written as Tove Lo. And I discovered her back in 2014 when I was away with the family. We were on a caravan break in the south of England, and we had a music channel on, and she just got this wonderful voice for the song called Habits Stay High. She's very much sings a lot. I think you can pretty much get the thrust of what the song is about from the name of that, with Stay High. Very much sings about more adult themes, but I think she's been described as the dark side of Swedish pop. It's these wonderful tunes with a beautiful crystal clear vocal, and she's got several albums out there. She's worked with an awful lot of people. She's worked with Kylie, and she's worked with Years and Years. She's worked with Coldplay, and more recently with Sean Paul, with a song called Calling. And I would hugely recommend you look her up if you haven't heard her. Obviously, if you're over 18, then please do look her up. If you're under 18, perhaps maybe wait until you are 18. She'll sing about drugs and naked people and what naked people do. So yes, it's very much, I love her, absolutely love her to bits. And I cannot wait every time I hear it. She does an awful lot of collaborations, so may not get that many albums from her. She's only done 4, but very, very much recommended. In fact, there's actually one that she's done under the name of Sue Ellen, which I discovered was her completely by chance. And it's just an album of cover versions, but beautifully done. Ideal if you're waking up on a Sunday morning with a hangover.
I'll put a link in the show notes. Thank you very much for that, Kenny. Philip, your turn.
I'm going to recommend something I'm listening to with my kids at the moment. We're very big into musical theatre, and one of my kids is obsessed with The Grinch. And there's just been a musical created called Grinch the Musical, which stars Matthew Morrison, who people probably know from Glee. He's a teacher in Glee, but he's also a big Broadway star. He was the first Link in Hairspray and other places. And yeah, so this has been something we've been playing in the car, which is suitable for my little kids to listen to. And it's been a nice festive little thing as we move away from the festive period, of course. But yeah, that's what I've been listening to. Grinch the Musical.
Definitely don't let the kids hear Tove Lo then. Or Tuvalu.
Yeah, no, I won't do that in the car with them.
Very good. Okay, my recommendation is going to be a radio show that I have been listening to pretty much my entire life. When I was very young, I had a cassette deck with a radio on it. So there were 2 shows that I would sit by the radio and record each week when they came on cassette. One of them was the Goon Show, so I would collect the Goon Show. That was always on at midday in Australia, every midday on Saturdays for years and years. I don't know if you ever remember that, Philip, but
I do remember.
that was me. That was me with my finger on the record button. The other show of a similar era was Hancock's Half Hour. So I've been re-listening to a lot of Hancock's Half Hour, which you can get all the collections on Spotify. So you just look up Tony Hancock and you can go to your heart's content. Doctor Who connections there. You've got Bill Kerr, and who was in Enemy of the World, Australian guy. And Terry Nation, of course, was associated with Tony Hancock as well. So bit of a Doctor Who connection there. But for me, yeah, lots of childhood nostalgia, going back and revisiting Tony Hancock. That's me. So thank you very much, guys. And once more, thanks for coming on, Kenny Smith.
A pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
It's been great, Ken. Thank you.
I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to stop the record button in a moment, and you can tell us all about your top secret stuff that you're not able to disclose on air. Starting now. You have been listening to the Sirens of Audio, the 20th anniversary of Storm Warning and the debut of the 8th Doctor for Big Finish, with Kenny Smith, Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your favourite podcatcher. You know you want to. Theme music by Husky by the Geek. Write to us at sirensofaudio@gmail.com. Look wistfully over our webpage at sirensofaudio.com. Our Twitter handle is Audio Sirens. Find us on Facebook by typing, you guessed it, the Sirens of Audio into the search bar. And until you see us again dropping like a bomb into your podcast feed, keep on listening to as much audio drama as your little earholes can handle. You know why? Because audio drama...
So that was exciting to me, and it's interesting too because I know originally when, hang on, someone's coming to the front door. That's okay.
It sounded like someone was releasing air from a balloon.
It was a vortisaur.